Hello, friends. Hello, fellow piano mavens and Chopin lovers all over the world from wherever you are watching. My name is Jed Distler, and I'm the official Chopin Competition blogger for Gramophone magazine. I'm also the host of the award-winning weekly radio show Between the Keys and the podcast The Piano Maven. I'm wearing many hats, but I am here in Warsaw from today, and actually I've been here in Warsaw for more than a week for the 19th International Chopin Competition. And we began this daily Chopin report yesterday when I talked about the performances from stage 2, day number 1. And yesterday we had stage 2, day number 2, and 10 pianists performed. So I'm going to go through what we heard yesterday as succinctly as I can. I have a lot of notes here because this is just way too much material to keep in my little brain, and I really don't speak very well spontaneously. I need a script and cue card, so if this looks kind of awkward, please forgive me. But I want to talk first about Eric Guo, who was the first pianist who played yesterday. He was the winner of the second Chopin competition on period instruments. And I think his experience with the instruments has definitely informed how he approaches Chopin on a modern concert grand, because his playing has become lighter and more nimble and more diversified as far as getting distinct timbres in the various registers of the piano, which is something that's characteristic of period instruments. And you heard a lot of color and nuance from his performances of preludes from Opus 24. He played a set of 6, which is the minimum number of preludes that candidates in stage 2 can play. His Chopin Barcarolle was just clear as crystal, a really lovely performance. But what I thought was the prize of his performance was of 4 mazurkas, the 4 mazurkas in Opus 17. What imagination and creativity and idiomatic flair he brought to these performances. And I kept thinking about the great legendary pianist Ignaz Friedman, who recorded mazurkas back in 1930. And very much like Friedman, Eric Guo's mazurkas truly mazurked, and that's a high compliment from me. And then next we heard the 20-year-old pianist Zhou Yu-hu. I hope I am pronouncing his name correctly. I found his playing generally kind of ordinary and uniform in character. When he played the Raindrop Prelude, there was very little sense of suspense as the music built to its central climax. Although I do have to say that he nailed that fast and furious 16th prelude to within an inch of its life. And that prelude is really more like an etude. Another young contender, Zihan Jin, slightly disappointed me because I loved his playing in stage 1. Now, I don't know what happened. Maybe he was just a little off form, because his opening selection, the 4th Scherzo, which is the first time we heard this piece in the competition, seemed a little heavy-footed and overly loud. And this is a piece that really needs to be light and quicksilver. You have to listen to Vladimir Ashkenazy's live Warsaw Competition performance from 1955. Can that really be 70 years ago? And that's really my reference version of this piece. And then Zihan Jin played the first 16 of the 24 preludes from Opus 28. And I found a lot of his playing to be kind of perfunctory, overly fast, and not very different from one prelude to another in terms of character. And unfortunately, he experienced a major memory lapse in prelude number 16. And that must have really disturbed him and shaken him up, because then he launched into the heroic A-flat Polonaise, Opus 53, as if he just didn't care. And I really felt bad for him in these moments because, memory lapses do happen in such a high-pressured situation like the Chopin competition, when you're being watched all over the world, I could only imagine the pressure. And, these kinds of things happen in less pressured situations. So we had a break, and then Adam Koldunsky came on stage, and he played all 24 preludes, Opus 28, followed by the A-flat Polonaise. And he's a pianist who emphasizes long paragraphs and long sentences in quest of, I guess, the so-called big picture. And he seems to let the little details take care of themselves. Not that he doesn't pay attention to them, but he's really a big picture kind of guy. But this is what I found interesting. If you watch him closely, you see that his physical economy, the physical economy of his body language, is really reflected in the sounds that he gets out of the piano. And in this sense, he reminds me of my own personal mentor, who was the late American pianist and composer Robert Helps, Helps, who lived from 1928 until 2001. And this is a name that you really should know. So go on YouTube, go on Wikipedia, go find out who Robert Helps is. He studied with an American teacher, Abby Whiteside, who is another name that you should know. And she was an American piano pedagogue whose unconventional method of teaching was not finger-centric in the way that many teachers are now, but she placed great importance on the torso and in rotating the torso, plus getting power from the back and the upper arm, which sort of means that the fingers are the tip of the crack of the whip, if you get what I mean. And if you've mastered this kind of approach to piano playing, your playing usually sounds more fluid and less notey, meaning N-O-T-E-Y, so that you're not just hearing, splashes of notes, but you're hearing just big lines that sound fluid and effortless. Now, it's obvious that Adam is too young to have studied with Bob Helps, and I'm not sure if he's ever read Abby Whiteside's book called Mastering the Chopin Etudes and other essays. But like I said in my Gramophone blog, where I talk more extensively about Adam Koldunsky, to hear him is to see him, and to see him is to hear him. The next pianist, David Krikuli, I first heard during the Van Cliburn competition, where his Scriabin playing impressed the hell out of me. And he played a really fantastic stage 2 set. He played the best performance we've heard so far, really centered and solid one of the Polonaise in F-sharp minor. But his cycle of the 24 preludes, I thought, was just nothing less than masterly. It was such natural and fluid music making with all kinds of nuances that seem to be improvised on the spot. And you can read my detailed description of his performance on my Gramophone blog, where I just go into chapter and verse. And the evening session began with pianist Shiori Kuwahara from Japan. And she's celebrating her 30th birthday today, so happy birthday, Shiori. And I described her stage 1 performances as being those of a classicist. But what I heard last night was unabashed romanticism. And I mean romanticism not in the self-indulgent, self-absorbed way that we've been hearing from more than a few contestants so far. But I'm talking about romanticism where you are not afraid to project, and you're not afraid of your vitality, and you're not afraid of silences, you're not afraid of drama. And we heard a quite dramatic performance of the F minor Fantasy, but I think the performance that really stood out in my memory was her really robust and red-blooded A-flat Polonaise. It had swagger up the wazoo. It had tremendous drive, but it also had nobility. And It had real authenticity, no contrivance at all. This is playing that just came from the heart. And oh my God, her sound just filled the room. And when it was over, I had to catch my breath. And then I looked at the journalist who's sitting next to me, who's a well-known journalist in Poland, and we looked at each other, and spontaneously at the same time, we both said, "The best Polonaise." Indeed it was. Well, that's going to be a Polonaise to live up to. And then after her set, we heard from the Lee brothers from South Korea. First Hugh Lee, and then his older sibling Hyuk Lee. And the highlight of Hugh Lee's set was his performance of the Piano Sonata No. 1, which is a rare student piece that we don't often hear. And I talked about that in yesterday's Chopin report. And basically, I think that Hugh Lee ate Kai Min Chang's lunch in that piece, if you compare the performances. He played with so much more detail, and in the minuet, he made something much lighter of it, and he pointed up the music's rather odd resemblance to Schubert. I wonder if Schubert and Chopin are separated at birth in that movement. And the rest of the piece was just played wonderfully well. But then I felt that he underplayed the rest of his selections. And as for his brother, Hyuk Lee, I don't know what to say. Hyuk Lee is an impeccable pianist. He doesn't put one foot forward. He serves up the goods. He delivers the goods. He is as professional as they come, but I kind of feel a sameness to almost everything he played, although I have to say that he really brought a lot of sensitivity to the Funeral March Sonata's scherzo in the trio section. And I loved his beautifully modulated phrase shapings in that enigmatic finale where both hands are playing rapid unison lines. And then hearing both Kwon Wook Lee and Tionyu Lee back to back in their groups of preludes, I thought basically Kwon Wook was an introvert and Tionyu was more of an extrovert. Also, Tionyu Lee played the Chopin First Sonata. Can you believe we heard this piece 3 times over the past 2 days? I think that never would have happened in 1960 or 1970, probably even in 1985. I think his performance was splitting the difference between Kai Min Chang. It was better than his, but it wasn't quite as compelling as Hugh Lee's performance, at least to my mind. But you can check out videos from these performances and see if you agree with my observations. And if you don't agree with them, that's perfectly fine too. And I welcome your feedback on my YouTube page. So I'll leave it at that because we have a lot of piano playing to get through. We have 20 more pianists in stage 2 over the next 2 days. From Warsaw, this is Jed Distler, and I look forward to being with you next time for the Chopin Report.